If you throw it over a fence, there is an offense. This is Buddhist Books Podcast, episode 178, Tipiṭaka, part 109, in which I will be reciting Bhikkhunivibhaṅga, Pācittiya 8, 9, and 10. I think it's safe to say. For those who have never seen me before, might want to click here and start at the beginning of the Tipiṭaka playlist. So I will go ahead and get to the reading. Let's see what the Tipiṭaka has in store for us today. Expiation, Pācittiya 8. At one time, the Enlightened One, the Lord, was staying at Savatthi in the Jeta Grove in Anathapindika's monastery. Now, at that time, a certain Brahmin who earned his keep as a hireling of a king, saying, quote, I will ask for wages as before, end quote, having washed his head, went along beside a nunnery to the royal court. A certain nun, having relieved herself in a receptacle, in throwing it away over a wall, let it fall on that Brahmin's head. Then that Brahmin, spread it about, saying, quote, these shaven-headed strumpets are not true recluses. How can they let a pot fall on my head? I will set fire to their dwelling. End quote. Sidebar. Never mind. It's a normal Brahmin behavior. And having taken up a firebrand, he entered the dwelling. A certain lay follower, as he was going out from the dwelling, saw that Brahmin who, having taken up the firebrand, was entering the dwelling. Seeing him, he spoke thus to that Brahmin. Quote, why do you, good sir, having taken up a firebrand, enter the dwelling? End quote. Quote, good sir, these shaven-headed strumpets let a pot fall on my head. I will set fire to their dwelling. End quote. Quote, go away, good Brahmin. This is auspicious. You will receive 1,000. And this is your end parentheses wage, end quote. Maybe 1,000 what was the kahapanas? Then that Brahmin, having washed his head, having gone to the royal court, received 1,000, and this was the wage. Then that lay follower, having entered the dwelling, having told this matter to the nuns, scolded them. Those who were modest nuns, spread it about, saying, quote, how can these nuns throw out excrement over a wall, end quote, I thought it was just pee.
Joke's on you, I'm into that shit.
Quote, is it true, as is said, monks, that nuns threw out excrement over a wall? End quote. Quote, it is true, Lord. End quote. The Enlightened One, the Lord, rebuked them, saying, quote, how, monks, can nuns over a wall? It is not, monks, for pleasing those who are not, yet, and pleased, this rule of training. Whatever none should throw out or should cause, another, end to throw out excrement or urine or rubbish or remains of food over a wall or over a fence, there is an offense of expiation. End quote. Whatever means, None means, Excrement means, it is called feces. Thank you. All right. Urine means, it is called water. No. Rubbish means, it is called sweepings. All right, I'll buy it. Remains of food means odd bits or bones or impure water. Now, I would have thought that urine is impure water, but the definition here given of urine is water. Remind me, if I ever end up in a time warp, and I end up in 6th century BC hanging out around, never mind. All right, not to ask for water, because now we know the definition. Never mind. Anyway, wall means there are 3 kinds of, walls. A wall of bricks, a wall of stones, a wall of wood. Fence means there are 3 kinds of, fences. A fence of bricks, a fence of stones, a fence of wood. Now, I had previously, been picturing one of those like, what is it? It's not a chain link fence, is it? With the little diamond-shaped metal bars. That's what I was picturing for fence. I guess a fence of wood? Yeah, I could picture that. A fence of bricks or stones? Now, what's the difference between a fence of bricks and a wall of bricks? Minor point. Comment below. Over a wall means beyond a wall. Over a fence means beyond a fence. Should throw out means if she herself throws out, there is an offense of expiation. If you throw it over a fence, there is an offense. That wordplay, of course, in the original Pali wouldn't have rhymed so much. Should cause, another, end to throw out means if she commands another, there is an offense of expiation. When once commanded, if she throws out many times, there is an offense of expiation. There is no offense if she throws out having looked over. If she throws out into what is not a track. If she is mad, if she is the first wrongdoer. Okay, so track avalanye, presumably meaning into a place where one is likely to pass. Right, okay. All right, well, that rule seems reasonable. Expiation, Pācittiya 9. At one time, the Enlightened One, the Lord, was staying at Savatthi in the Jeta Grove in Anathapindika's monastery. Now at that time, a certain Brahmin's cornfield was beside a nunnery. The nuns threw out excrement and urine and rubbish and remains of food into the field. Then that Brahmin, spread it about, saying, quote, how can the nuns despoil our cornfield? Nuns heard that Brahmin who, spread it about. Those who were modest nuns, spread it about, saying, quote, how can nuns throw out excrement? and the remains of food onto the crops, end quote. 3 dots. Quote, is it true, as is said, monks, that nuns threw out 3 dots onto the crops, end quote. Quote, it is true, Lord, end quote, the enlightened one. The Lord rebuked them, saying, quote, how, monks, can nuns throw out 3 dots onto the crops? It is not, monks, for pleasing those who are not, parentheses, yet, and parentheses, pleased. 3 dots, this rule of training. Whatever nuns should throw out or should cause, parentheses, another, end parentheses, to throw out excrement or urine or rubbish or the remains of food onto the crops, there is an offense of expiation, end quote. Whatever means 3 dots, none means 3 dots. Excrement means, parentheses, CVIII 2 1, end parentheses. 3 dots or impure water. So rather, this is just fun, Miss Horner, the 1930s British lady, you remember, some of you might remember how in the early Sangha and Pācittiya rules of Mahavibhaṅga, or the rules for monks, Sutta Vibhaṅga, left out a lot, especially when it came to sexy things. But now, rather than write, it is called feces. 4 words, all of them 1 syllable. She would prefer to write CVIII, 2, 1 in parentheses, which it's the same. It takes the same amount of time as writing. It is called feces. Anyway, didn't want to write that again. You feel gross after typing that. And it's got this AE symbol. How do you even do that on an old typewriter? Do you type A and then adjust the paper and type E? I don't know. Maybe old typewriters had that character. Anyway, crops means grain and pulses planted as food for the use of human beings. Should throw out means if she herself throws out, there is an offense of expiation. Should cause, parentheses, another, end parentheses, to throw out means 3 dots, parentheses, CVIII, 2, 1, end parentheses, 3 dots, offense of expiation. Sometimes the 3 dots make sense, other times they don't. If she thinks that they are crops when they are crops, parentheses, and, end parentheses, throws out or causes, parentheses, another, end parentheses, to throw out, there is an offense of expiation. If she is in doubt as to whether they are crops, 3 dots. If she thinks that they are not crops when they are crops, 3 dots, offense of expiation. There is, was what goes in the 3 dots in that case. If she thinks that they are crops when they are not crops, there is an offense of wrongdoing. If she is in doubt as to whether they are not crops, there is an offense of wrongdoing. If she thinks that they are not crops when they are not crops, there is no offense. There is no offense if she throws out having looked around. What? If she throws out on the edges of the field, if she throws out having asked the owner, parentheses, for permission, end parentheses, and having obtained permission, if she is mad, if she is the first wrongdoer. Now, I'm sure this is not what they meant, but the way it reads is that a nun, if she looks around at the corn she's about to throw the feces at, then it's fine. It's just if she just closes her eyes and blindly throws feces onto the corn, then that's what we're talking about. Looking around first, well then, no harm, no foul. Again, I know that's not what they meant, but that's what it says. So that's odd. Continuing. Again, no problems with either of these rules. They both make perfect sense. Expiation, Pācittiya 10. At one time, the enlightened one, the Lord, was staying in Rajagaha in the bamboo grove at the squirrels' feeding place. Now at that time there was a festival on a mountaintop in Rajagaha. The group of 6 nuns went to see the festival on the mountaintop. Where are they? Okay. Group of 6 nuns. People, 3 dots, spread it about, saying, quote, how can nuns come to see dancing and singing and music like women householders who enjoy pleasures of the senses? Nuns heard these people who, 3 dots, spread it about. Those who were modest nuns, 3 dots, spread it about, saying, quote, how can the group of 6 nuns go to see, 3 dots, music? End quote, 3 dots. Quote, it is true, Lord. End quote. Miss Horner's just sick of it. Sick of her job. Doesn't want to do it anymore. Just put it all in the 3 dots. Sorry. She's the translator. This is in the credits in the beginning. I'm sure she was a lovely person. But anyway, the enlightened one, the Lord, rebuked them, saying, now, sidebar, I'm not okay with this rule. So the first 2 were fine, excrement. And again, I'm speaking in 2023 about rules from 6th century BC. But when the group of 17 monks went to the same festival in the same place, they got in trouble because they ate solid food at the wrong time. These nuns are getting in trouble for going to the festival. Again, different time. It was before the 1960s, so double standard. Monks can go to the festival, just not eat. Nuns can't go to the festival. All right. It is true, Lord, the enlightened one, the Lord, rebuked them, saying, how, monks, can the group of 6 monks, the 6 nuns, go to see, 3 dots, music? It is not, monks, for pleasing those who are not, parentheses, yet, and parentheses, pleased. 3 dots, this rule of training. Whatever nuns should go to see dancing or singing or music, there is an offense of expiation. It's one of the things, I had a certain thing in mind when I began reading these books, and then as I've been reading them, certain things have become clear, as far as like what it's doing, at least for me personally. Reading these books, and it's very grounding. It's very grounding. I've mentioned before, again, this is a sidebar. The rest is just whatever means, none means. I'll read it in a moment, but, perhaps because, obviously Buddhism changed and evolved from that to Mahayana, which was already pretty kind of fantastical and a little bit mystical if you read the scriptures, the way it's written. And then Vajrayana especially, and then kind of the white guy in the 40s and 50s interpretation. There were like a very, very small subset, much smaller than today, of people who were interested in that. My dad and my grandma was among them. And so the way that Buddhism was taught to me was very, like, you have to be able to see astral. You know what I mean? Even at the age of 4, I'm like, yeah, okay, sure, I understand. Like when my dad's like, can you see that? Can you feel that? Can you feel that energy? And I'm like, uh-huh. We would do chanting with Mula Bandha and looking up at the third eye and this kind of thing, and a lot of breathing, a lot of chanting. And so, yeah, you feel things. You feel very tangibly something that the other kids on the playground don't understand in 1984, But it's, I think, positive, or at least it's a thing that now, 40 years later, reading, that Buddha told the nuns, don't throw your poop over the wall. Right. Yeah. That makes sense, right? It's very down to earth. And then helicopters in India. Who knew? Yeah. But the longtime viewers of this program or listeners of this podcast know that I struggled more with it before, and now I've kind of like come to like let it wash over, like, oh, okay, this is where the sexism is, this is where the double standards are. But it's disappointing, you know, to have grown up with statues of Lord Buddha around and a reverence for these statues, and just this idea that this is, my grandma on my mom's side says Jesus is the perfect man. My dad doesn't say explicitly that this is the perfect man, but this is the person who showed the way and the guide, and the person who, we should look up to and follow the advice of. And so it was very like, up here kind of thing. And then to read, a very reliable account of him very blatantly giving a double standard for the monks and the nuns. Now, I suppose there's an argument to be made that it's different. He didn't say why. There's no mention of why the nuns aren't allowed to go to the festival, but the monks are, as long as they don't eat at the wrong time. So, a person could, maybe later in these commentaries, Buddha Gosa and others will explain, but I doubt it. They probably would have, well, of course, nuns can't go. Maybe because it's not safe, because there's rowdy, drunk men at a music festival, so nuns should stay away. But maybe that's the reason. Or it's just unseemly for lady monks, for nuns to be seen at a festival, where for monks it's okay, it's all right. Give them a pass. But why? They don't say. They just say monks can go, nuns can't. So it's a process. It's a process. Process toward what? And again, it's grounding. It's a process toward bringing into focus and realism. That these were people, these were flesh and blood people walking around the earth at one time, and they were flawed from our perspective. Even Lord Buddha was flawed. I'll go ahead and finish reading. Whatever means 3 dots. And then on top of reading very realist, don't throw your poop over the counter, and nuns and monks have separate rules because girls, don't have as much rights as boys do. Except when it comes to masturbating, apparently. It's less of an offense when a girl does that, when a nun does, as opposed to a monk. So that was interesting. And then also, through this filter of Miss Horner's translation with the 3 dots every half sentence, you don't get to read a whole sentence. You have to just have 3 dots because of the way that this scripture is being treated by a British woman in the 30s. So it's a very interesting process. I don't know. If you're along for the ride, I don't understand why you're along for the ride. I barely understand why I'm doing this. I don't understand why someone would watch it. All right, so nun means 3 dots. Dancing means whatever is dancing. Singing means whatever is singing. I would get an F if I were in school and I was asked to define these words. I would get a literal F or a 0, not even an F. Music means whatever is music. If she goes to see, there is an offense of wrongdoing. Standing where she sees or hears, there is an offense of expiation. If, having left the region of sight, she sees or hears again, there is an offense of expiation. If she goes to see one or the other, there is an offense of wrongdoing. Standing where she sees or hears, there is an offense of expiation. If, having left the region of sight, she sees or hears again, there is an offense of expiation. There is no offense if, standing in a monastery, she sees or hears. If, having come to where nuns are resting or sitting down or lying down, they dance or sing or play music. If, going along a path, she sees or hears, if, having gone, as there is something to be done, she sees or hears. If there are accidents, If she is mad, and we can all take a moment to visualize all of the things that she might be doing if she's mad, the mad nun. If she is the first wrongdoer. The first division, that on garlic. All right, so it being the 10th of the Pācittiya, we finished a section, because apparently the sections are in groups of 10, at least for now. Sometimes if there's like 83, there'll be one group of 13 or that kind of thing. What is so much beeping and clicking and people talking outside? All right, I'm sorry about this one. If you watched it all the way through, feel free to comment below. There's hundreds of these, so some of them are more interesting than others, and some of them are light, and and some of them are like this, where I'm like, okay, it's a process. And what are they so? Is that television, or are there people shouting outside? It's so weird. Okay, I will go ahead and close. Make the best of this. To the north and to the south, to the east and to the west, to the spirits of light amongst us, and to the spirits outside arguing, apparently, no, to the spirits below. We send out our reverent love and compassion. May all beings be happy. May all beings be serene. May all beings be in peace. Until next time.